Hey guys, Sean here, and I'm sitting with Dr. Thomas Lilly from High Street Chiropractic. He's agreed to answer some questions about the benefits of chiropractic services. Thank you so much for having me, Tom.
Certainly.
First question I want to ask is, a lot of people think that your patients are only people with severe injuries or in a lot of pain. Are there some benefits to a relatively healthy individual with chiropractic services?
Definitely. There are a lot of cases where somebody's not in acute pain or have an acute injury that they're managing, or even a chronic injury,
Okay.
where it could be beneficial to see someone like myself or someone who's qualified in looking at movement pattern disorders and other types of pain presentations.
Beauty.
So essentially, a great example from maybe one of your clients would be someone that notices that their movement is potentially asymmetrical, or
Right.
they have a little tweak that doesn't seem quite right, that they may not necessarily have pain yet.
Right.
So a good example would be someone maybe that's doing an overhead press
Yeah.
and notices that one arm doesn't quite get to the same extension of the same height as another arm,
Right.
but there's not necessarily any pain associated with it. Um, there are a lot of reasons why a case like that could exist.
Okay.
And it would be, to start off with a basic movement screen and to pick those things out is important. But when you can't figure out the exact cause, that's when someone like me or someone that's trained in movement science and body work is great to try to resolve those issues.
Great. Okay, so it's more of a, like you mentioned before, just quality of movement as opposed to fixing some severe pain like that, and anybody could probably benefit from that. That's perfect.
For the most part, yeah. Most
Yeah.
people will have something like that going on.
Yeah.
And it's usually, in that example of, say, a shoulder, or say you can't get your arms up to the same height, a likely candidate's a shoulder, but it could be a thoracic spine issue, it could
Right.
be a core, either strength or coordination or timing issue,
Right.
it could be a hip issue, it could be a number of things. So that's why it's important to actually delve into that a little bit and check it out and find the root cause. And a lot of times it's a really simple fix. So it's a simple corrective exercise, or a little bit of soft tissue work, or some other sort of manual therapy that can fix that little movement flaw, and the person's good to go.
Perfect. Awesome. Great answer. Second question is, what's the most common issue you come across in your day-to-day seeing your clients?
Number one thing that I see come through my door is low back pain easily. Within that category of problem, probably one of the most common issues is what's called a flexion intolerant low back.
Okay.
So essentially, what that means is when somebody stands up, okay, in their low back, you should have some level of a curvature inwards. Right?
Okay,
The
yeah.
lumbar lordosis.
Yeah.
There is no perfect curve. Everyone's a little different, but basically we'll call that neutral.
Yep.
And so when you bend forward and reverse that curve, round it down,
Right.
that's called flexion. So this type of patient is someone that when they bend forward to touch their toes, for example, they end up with low back pain.
Okay. Yeah.
The reason that I see it so commonly is because there are so many things that we do that essentially drive us towards that flexion moment. Now, common examples would be sitting slouched for long periods of time,
Yeah.
or inappropriate lifting or bending patterns. So ultimately what it comes down to, and the fix for that problem, is usually teaching someone how to move through their hip joints as opposed to the low back. So,
Right. Okay.
so one of the common presentations that I see is, for example, someone that bent over in the morning, they put their socks on, and their back went out.
Right.
Alright.
Okay.
So it's usually that event was the straw that broke the camel's back, and
Right.
that person had been essentially dominating their forward bending or lifting or moving actions by flexing through the low back for
Right.
long periods of time, as opposed to using their
Their
hips.
hips. Okay. Great.
So usually reteaching a hip hinging pattern and strengthening that pattern with things like a hip thrust or a deadlift, or that type of patterning is the way to go about fixing that.
Perfect. So just basic hip hinging, get the pattern down, maybe administer an external load when it's appropriate,
Exactly.
fix it up. Perfect.
Exactly.
Good.
And that usually tends to go along hand in hand with, we'll hit mobility, core strength,
Yeah.
and core strength maintaining a relatively neutral spine during dynamic movements,
Beauty.
and glute strengthening.
Nice. Awesome. We're on the same page there. That's awesome. So last question would be, gotta remember now. We're gonna keep rolling. I can't recall it. Yes. Drawing a blank. Go ahead if.
Aside from mobility, what's the most important component in fitness people overlook?
Right. Okay. So for those who didn't hear it, aside from mobility, what would be the most important component of fitness you would want your patients to focus on?
What it really comes down to is strength. Right?
Nice.
So, first of all, you need to have a goal. Right?
Yeah.
So whether or not your goal is actually pure strength,
Mhm.
all right. A lot of people's goal is to look good or to be able to perform their daily functions
Mhm.
and that kind of thing, without perform their daily functions at a level that they don't feel that they're being taxed by doing their normal things.
Right. Exactly.
And so ultimately, what a lot of that comes down to is strength training.
Yeah.
And appropriate strength training. So it's important to find where your current level is at
Mhm.
and push beyond that.
Yeah.
So it's really important to develop strength in the movements and directions and functional types of things that or movements that you would use in your daily activity or your sport or whatever your goal is geared to. Further to that, strength is important too, right? And it's always important to kind of push yourself in a safe way,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Ideally under the guidance of someone that knows what they're looking for.
Yeah. Exactly.
But it's also important to not push it too hard, right? So I mean, pushing training hard is really important.
Right.
But I also want to emphasize the importance of rest days or rest time or deloading. So it really is, in my opinion, important to schedule those rest days and deloading periods in so that you can maximize your progression forward.
Absolutely. What about just the simple fact of you're following the program, and this is calling for a heavy day, and you're just all these outside factors impact maybe your mental state, your energy level, and you know that you cannot do an effective heavy training day. There's nothing wrong with deloading
Absolutely.
and working on your mobility, working on some correctives, maybe taking a walk. There's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely not. No.
So
No. There's a lot of reasons why you would want to, in that specific example, to
Yeah.
deload on one day or have a little bit of a different rest day or an off day. There's lots of good reasons to work on instead of heavy strength days, maybe a speed day or maybe maybe a little bit more of an endurance day or even if you're really not feeling great, then it's strictly mobility or work on your problems, work on your issues.
yeah, exactly. Perfect. Well, that's going to wrap it up. Thank you so much again, Tom.
You're very welcome.
We'll see you next time, guys.